had started a story about talking about the old house that Gene helped us remodel. And I was my point of starting the story was to how y'all connected.
Right.
But then I just got sidetracked. So the long story short, Gene was remodeling that house for us and just kept bragging about this company in town that was delivering the most beautiful wood. And like he would call and it'd be there in a couple hours. And I just, to me, wood's wood, whatever, But then the house is finished. We moved in. 6 months later, Josh is now coming to our church, and we having a get together at our house. And he sees the address, and he puts two and two together.
Oh yeah.
He's like, "Is your father-in-law Mr. Gene?"
Yes.
And I said, "Yes." And so I think I might have caught him on the spot. And Gene's like, "Yes, the most beautiful wood. Tell us about this. You're the expert."
Well, we had to. Somebody had done some work in the house, and they put, for the second floor, the floor joist, they put 2x6s. Well, the inspector came and said, "You got to be kidding, man! It's got to be 2x12s." And so we needed some nice 2x12s. I think we ended up sistering them onto the 2x6s that were there. They were brand new, and so I have to tell you, I think I found you online to find that y'all had the lumber. I don't think he told me. I think I just found you and called, and you said, "Hey, we'll deliver those to you." And I said, "You're kidding." I was trying to figure out a trailer and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, it was in no time. There were the most beautiful, almost knot-free pine 2x12s. I think there were 16s. I don't remember the length on them right this minute. But I promise you, I have done a lot of carpentry work. I have never seen any structural lumber as fine as that was. And we continued with you through the whole project, which was months.
Yeah.
And every single thing we wanted, needed, you had, you delivered. And I know you didn't know me from Adam, so I went there one time to look over for something, and you were at the counter, and you personally dealt with me, and this sounds like a commercial for your business. I don't know what it is.
Mr. Steve's the true test. Is everything he's saying true?
He bleeds sawdust. So. He loved great lumber. He know it when he see it.
Yeah, but does he brag on Ivy's?
Oh yes.
Oh yeah.
It's been 8-9 years.
You set the standard, huh? So now everywhere he goes.
Listen, this is high praise, and I appreciate it. I remember taking a phone call, and you were on the other end of the call, and I remember thinking, man, this is such a nice man. He's so easy to talk to and easy to work with, and because you don't always get that, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
a lot of contractors are, time is money, and and that's fine. That's the way it's got to be.
Sure.
But I just remember you standing out in that of just being just really easy to work with and great, and that's kind of what you live for, finding folks like that. So
when we initially decided to have Mr. Gene on. We were like, well, we might need to plan for 2 hours. And we were like, well, 1 hour, maybe 2 hours. Yeah. And here we are in the third hour. He made a second trip back up here just so we could finish.
That's right.
Because
repeat.
The 7 principles we were going to go through. The first hour, we didn't even get to the first one. Second hour, we got through 3 or 4 of them. So we're going to finish up. And then Mr. Steve has been. Well, Gene, you tell us how you've told me the story about how you met.
When I moved to Calvary in 1982, so that's 42 years ago, right? I always hated mowing grass, and so the janitor at our church was named Mr. Joe, and I said, "Joe, do you know anybody that mows grass? I don't need anything. I just need them to mow the grass once a week during the summer." And he said, "Well, I got 2 twin boys. I'll send them over Thursday." Thursday was always my day off. So I'm going to send them over Thursday, and one of them will do it. And Steve jumped out of the car when they got there that day, got my mower and mowed, and I can't get him to go home.
Yeah.
He's been with me ever since.
Yeah.
We worked for the... Sir?
1982, was it?
Yep, 1982. Yeah, he was just a child.
Yeah.
You were 18? Was that right?
Maybe 17, 18, somewhere up there, yeah.
Well, so when I started coming around the family, I mean, Mr. Steve is just part of the family. He was there for the holidays and every day, and he was driving Laurie's old car from high school, the Bronco. And you drove that.
He put that in the ground.
Yeah.
Drove it for about 15, 16 years or so.
After she drove it, yeah. So,
and
anyways,
it was worn out when I bought it, by the way.
And I'll tell you what, they love, my kids love going to see Pop and Nana, but they also want to see Mr. Steve.
Yeah,
and Mr.
I love them. They're great.
Yeah. So,
What's your last name?
Alexander.
yeah.
Gotcha.
So he just, man, what would does he have a title? He's just your right-hand man. Would you say your right-hand man?
Let's call it that.
And when you spend that much time with somebody, I mean, they end up thinking like you think, right?
Yeah.
You don't even have to ask for a tool anymore.
No.
You turn, he has it.
I don't even turn. I just lift my hand like that, and he puts it in it.
Yeah.
That's no exaggeration.
Yeah.
I call him my surgical nurse.
Yeah. Well, I heard he was testing your faith in him this morning in the traffic. So driving the truck.
Hold up.
I'm not accustomed to somebody else driving.
Yeah.
But I had to study for teach a Bible lesson on Sundays, and I wanted to do that this morning, study. And when we got to town, I said, "Now pull over when we get to town," because I know he doesn't like to drive in heavy traffic. But he didn't pull over. And when I looked up, we were in it. I said, "Buddy, there's a place to pull over. You're with it." So he scared me to death. My blood pressure's up right now, I'm afraid.
All right.
They always hit me. I never hit them.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
He's had 2 wrecks in the last 6 months.
6 months.
Yeah. But neither one of them his fault.
Yeah.
There you
One of
go.
them right there at the intersection by the house. Lady just rammed into him.
Well, so we're here to finish up our series. This is your I think you might be our first 3-parter.
That's right.
Yeah.
7 business lessons.
Yeah.
Right?
7 business lessons. And
before as I get started, I wrote these notes to myself as we finished last time. So it said I was going to come back October 24th, but something happened. We didn't get to do that. But I just remembered that a man in our church, when I first came to Calvary, this was the same week that I just told you about for Steve, that Sunday, my very first Sunday. Walk in, I want to meet everybody, let them know me, and so you're just doing a lot of handshaking, a lot of, hey, my name is, and that kind of thing. And about the 3rd person I met was an older gentleman. I told him older, and I was thinking this morning, he was probably younger than I am right now. So it's been a long time ago, But his name was Ray Keys, and he pulled me down to him and whisper shouted in my ear. He wanted to make sure I heard it. He said, "I'm glad you're here, and I just want you to remember one thing." And I said, "Well, what is that?" He said, "It's not a sin to strike out." I said, "Well, okay, if you say so." And I went on about the day, and that week I got this letter from him. "Dear Gene, I want you to remember that not every at-bat is a home run. Failure suffers from a bad rap. Not everything you attempt will bring the applause of the multitudes. As a matter of fact, there will be many failures in life." One of Babe Ruth's biographers wrote, in 1923, and I noted this morning, that's 101 years ago, Babe Ruth broke the record for the most home runs in a season. That same year, he also broke the record for the highest batting average. And there's a 3rd record that no one wants to talk about, or didn't then, and he broke it that year. In 1923, Babe Ruth struck out more times than any other player in Major League Baseball history. Babe Ruth was not afraid to strike out. This is all still his letter to me. And it was this fearlessness that contributed to his remarkable career. He was the first player to hit 60 home runs in one season, a record he held for 34 years. He also held a lifetime total home run record of 714 until Hank Aaron broke it in 1974. He held other records too. He had 1,330 career strikeouts, a record he held for 29 years until it was broken by none other than the great Mickey Mantle. "Most people want to hit home runs," Mr. Key said to me, or wrote. The problem is they are afraid to fail in order to get there. As Babe Ruth proved, you can't have one without the other. And he was trying to tell me something very important for my life, especially in ministry. There was, hey, you're going to try some things that they're going to be absolute failures. But that's okay, because not, as he liked to say, not every at-bat is a home run. And it made me think so much of my dad's influence on my life, and these principles we're talking about had so much to do with who my dad was. He was unafraid to try. And he often would talk about, I remember asking him, why are you the only person in our little town that sells fish? We got a whole ocean of fish coming by us. We got people that want to fish and want to sell their fish, but you're the only guy in town. You know, I was aware enough to ask the question, and he said, because they don't want to. They don't want to try. They don't want to risk. He said, it's a big risk to start a business. And you have to come to a place where you say, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to try. And if I fail, our Brother John, our pastor at the time of this story I just told you, he used to say, when we fail, don't you ever call it a failure. He says, we have now eliminated one of the possibilities. That's what we've done if we've failed. Just keep trudging on. So all of the things my dad taught me kind of are embodied around this idea that we mustn't just sit. I remember Mr. Keys saying one time, you know, you can't hit a home run from your easy chair. You got to be out doing the business of whatever the business is in order to hit a home run. Or strike out, either one.
Well, and look, and there are some people that are just wired to be really good employees. That they don't want, they couldn't tolerate the risk. They might even have the gift to do that, and we're thankful for those people. Right. I think that the danger of that is when those wires get crossed, and it goes both ways. There are some people, we get to a place where we should be growing in our leadership, but we can't get out of doing the job. And there are some people that don't want to do the job. They can't let it go. And the other side, you have some employees that decide they want to be the boss, right?
And they can't do that.
And so that's what when I was a school teacher, that was always my biggest knock against the education system is you have principals that are horrible principals, but they were good classroom teachers.
And that's how they went and found them.
Exactly. And
well,
so you
find
promote
a good teacher, they'll be a...
Yes, and it's horrible. I'm like, no, you need to go to the private sector, go get a businessman to come run the school.
Right.
That's who needs to be running the school, right? And so the wires are just crossed there. But that's
and I don't know if that'll ever get fixed. It doesn't look like it will.
I don't know. Don't know.
So, well, you want me to start?
Good stuff. Well, yeah. So how many have we gone through?
We've already checked off 3 of those 7.
Yes.
Okay, the next one.
Let's get to it.
The next one is, the deal is not the only deal. My dad used to say, there are people going to come to you and they're going to say, if you don't invest in this right now, your life as you know it will never be the same again. You're losing. You're jumping off the cliff by not doing this deal. And that's everything from, I remember when we were in seminary, this man came to see us one night. He made an appointment somehow. I don't remember that part. But he came in and when he walked in the door, he threw a pile of dirt in our living room on the floor. And he dragged behind him a vacuum cleaner. And he said, I'm going to show you why you need this. And of course, he had to clean up his mess. And we were standing there kind of aghast. What in the world? And he vacuumed it up. Now, listen, our rent at that time at seminary was $38 a month. So, I mean, it was not a luscious, wonderful house. And you can know, I worked for the seminary painting houses for $1 an hour. So, you know, for somebody to come in and want me to buy a $600 vacuum cleaner because I needed to get the dust from around the windows, you know, it was, to me, was ludicrous.
That is ludicrous.
In his presentation, he said, if you don't buy this vacuum cleaner, your life is never going to be the same. You have the opportunity tonight to change the rest of your life by making what you breathe in your own house being safe for you. And he had a spiel that went with it. And I said, well, I'm gonna risk it without it, because they got something out there behind you that needs my $600 more than you do.
Yeah,
but right. I thought, this is what Daddy was talking about.
Yeah.
People will tell you, not just selling you something like this, but like an investment or whatever. A lot of things come our way, and he just reminded me, just look over your shoulder. Right coming around that next corner is another deal.
Yeah.
And you can evaluate that one, but evaluate the one that's in front of you.
Yeah.
Rather than emotionally just, oh my, I'm going to be breathing that kind of dust in my house.
Well, that's a kind of the current trend that has come along with social media and technology evolving is FOMO, right? The fear of missing out. And that is a huge motivator for people making decisions today.
Wow.
Right? And I'm guilty of it. We've done a lot with personality profiles and stuff like that. And one of them's the Enneagram, and I'm a 7 on the Enneagram, which pretty much the curse of a 7 on the Enneagram is what's currently in my life is never going to be enough to fulfill me. There's always more, right? And they say that a 7 on the Enneagram is a glutton. There's always more. And so early on, I'm a little bit more self-aware now, but it was always a new thing, a new idea. And, and so having people around me to say no is helpful. So,
but you're not always open to that. I'm not talking about you personally. I'm just saying we are not always open to that because the lure, that used to tell me in fishing, you go to Bass Pro and you look down the aisles of the fishing lures that are there, and there are thousands upon thousands of them, and you think, oh, that one looks good. Oh, that one looks good. And you find out that those are made to catch fishermen, not fish. You follow me? They look good to me. Doesn't mean it's going to look good to the fish.
If I was a fish, I would like that.
They're not selling, right? They're not selling to fish. They're selling to fishermen or fisherwomen. Yeah. And it's important to note that when these people come around with the deals, they have often they have no real knowledge of what the future is going to bring from this investment. But they want you to think they do. So you look out the window and you see they drove up in a 1971 Oldsmobile that's got 3 ball tires on it, and they're trying to get you to invest $200,000 in something, and you think something this deal may not be the deal I need to jump on. But people do it all the time.
Yeah, and I think that you made a good point. Is a lot of times this is at the neglect of what's in front of you, and I think of Ivy's, and when we're talking to your dad, and I think of David Alvis, but like in recent years, it's been compounding growth. But for the first 20, 30 years, it was no growth, right? It was really investing in this business. And then as time comes, you see opportunities that are compounded. But if you would have been 5 years into Ivy's and you decide to put a store in Halton and then 5 years later into Blanchard, it had been spread too thin.
That's right.
And so same thing with David with his restaurants. And so I remember hearing a guy tell me, or I listened to a guy or read a book or something, but he says the best investment you can make is into your own business. That's your best return, is investing back in your own business.
Absolutely. Yep. So I want to further illustrate your point because I think it's so good. I recently heard a story of a peer of mine who had just sold his business. And the story went down that the firm approached him to sell his business and said, hey, we want to buy you and here's our offer. And he said, nah, I don't think so. And so a little while later, they came back and they said, hey, we'd like to buy your business. Here's our offer. And he said, I don't think so. Time passed. They come back and they say, what do you want? And so the deal is not the only deal.
Yep.
When I heard that, I immediately thought about that story.
Yeah.
Because, there's a little bit of negotiation and sometimes in just holding pat.
Well, and I can't remember the numbers, but I remember reading with the deal with PayPal with Elon. And I mean, they held out for maybe 2 or 3 years, and it literally like was 10 times the offer.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it was in the billions when it was in the millions. You know,
Right.
and just by waiting 2 or 3 years.
Mm-hmm. Now, sometimes that weight can hurt you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, if you're sleeping on a couch in your office
Yeah.
and eating,
Cheetos.
exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, it is, interesting stuff.
I like that
Okay,
point.
the next one is pennies is pennies, but 100 of them make $1. That was Dad. He loved to say that. Pennies is pennies. You knew the rest of it, but 100 of them make $1. He just meant that it's easy, especially in business, and he would talk about family a lot there as well, but in business, to let things slide because of the urgency of the moment. Oh, those are $20 a piece? I thought we used to pay 10. Oh, well, I don't have time to deal with that. And so next thing you know, you're paying more for something than it's worth. And you just aren't paying attention, and it's the pennies. He said, now, if it's $10,000 and now they want $20,000, you're awake for that. But you could be kind of dozing if it's $3 and $5, and but when you realize, well, we buy 1,000 of those a month, that starts adding up, and you don't see it.
Yeah.
So he would say, just remember, pennies is pennies, and 100 of them make $1. So it doesn't take long for the little to become big. He used to tell me, I wrote it down here so I wouldn't forget to tell you, it's hard to spend a $100 bill. It's easy to spend a $1 bill. And he said, always have a $100 bill in your wallet. And there's one in mine. I don't have a wallet, but I have a thing, a little clip. And it's got a $100 bill in it. Just because of that, he said, you'll have it when you need it because you're not going to spend it.
Yeah.
A $100 bill, he said, is harder to spend than a $1 bill.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the opposite side of that. But it means simply that you need to keep your eye on what you're spending on.
Oh, yeah.
Careful. Man, I just know when I had these the storage facilities that it was just so easy to let it dribble out.
Oh, yeah.
Let it dribble away.
Yeah.
And I made way too many times I did something stupid like this, and that was, oh, Josh, we're such good friends, Yeah, I usually charge $75 for that, but I'm going to give it to you for $40. Well, first of all, you didn't need the reduction because you make plenty of money. You just needed the space, and you were willing to pay whatever the price is. You didn't even question, really. But I felt like I needed to do that for some stupid reason. And what I was doing, because you ended up staying 10 years, and you take $40 a month over 10 years and tell me how much I lost just by being stupid about my pennies, right? And penny, y'all, I hope we all understand what I'm saying now.
I do every once in a while. I'll get on to our Apple account and look at our subscriptions.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait a minute.
What am I doing?
What are these 12 subscriptions here? So I'm calling the kids in the room. What is this? Oh, Mom said I could sign up for this. It's only $3 a month.
Yeah.
I was like, well, when's the last time you were on there? It's like, oh, I deleted that a year ago. I'm like, wait, what?
Right.
So, and then it just adds up.
So
By the way, Leighton, I have one of your subscriptions at home. We use it quite frequently. Thank you very much. He put it on at Christmas for his kids to watch something.
Right.
We're logged into the Apple TV.
I even know his password.
Yeah, there you go.
So I put two things together over time being in business. And the first is you hear business owners say consistently, it gets harder every year. And so take that on one side. And then you've come to learn that traditionally from year to year, you can almost book an increase of your expenses anywhere from about 3% to 5% a year, just as a given. Be it that just wages are rising or taxes are going up or costs, you can pretty much book it in. 3% at least is going to go up. And so when you talk about watching those pennies, I think it's even more important in that context of it. The reason why it's getting harder every year is because your expenses are going up every year. And there's probably nothing you can do about some of those things.
Right.
However, it becomes even more important to watch the pennies in light of the fact that it's going up. And every year you got to find more efficiency in your business or find ways to help offset that expense creep that just constantly is going on every single day. And so I think that's another really, really good point.
You can't always just take your 3% you need and put it on the customer. You can't raise it because they'll find somebody else that can do it at the price that you were doing it at.
You might can do it a couple times. I can do it a couple times.
I think you can. I think it comes into the messaging, right? But like, how many SKUs does Avi have?
Oh, thousands.
And out of 1,000, 2,000 SKUs, say 2,000, how many of them have increased in their price to you over the past 12 months?
I mean, I would almost say 110%.
Yeah. And so then,
well, over the past 2-3 years, right?
So then, the question is, are you going and we got us a phone thing.
Sorry.
Now, Steve, you said you had it on silent. Podcasting, that's the rule number one broken. But yeah, but that's what's. I mean, that seems like it's almost a full-time job just to keep track of the cost of products on that scale.
Sure.
And then you got to go change it in the system. You got to go change it on the little thing.
Yep.
And then somebody shows up and says, "Hey, I've been buying this here, and you just went up a quarter." And they're like, "Hey, sorry,"
because they're watching their pennies.
Yeah, they are exactly. Yeah. And so, man, but we just got a notice from our main supplier that shingles are going up in 30 days, right?
Amazing,
Lovely.
Yep.
So then it's like, well, okay, there's somebody in our town that's not going to raise their price because they want to capture it.
That's exactly right.
And so then it comes down to the messaging. Like, what is it that we can improve to be able to not have to absorb that cost and to raise it to our customer?
Right.
And then it kind of comes
That's
down
what you were talking about just then, too. The same thing, right?
Yeah.
How you can efficiently do your business better so that you don't have to put that to me.
Yes, it's the value, right? It's the intangible, right? You're selling a fathom, right? You can't point to it, customer service or whatever you want to call it.
That's right. That's right. So watch your pennies. I love it.
Yeah, I love it. It's a great one.
I've heard it. If you watch your pennies, your nickels will take care of themselves. I've heard that.
Yeah.
So that's an important one.
Yeah,
very good.
I think it is.
Yeah.
Okay. The next one is the sleepy owner is a person almost out of business. He said, if you are too busy to check on your own business, you don't deserve to have the business. And you're not going to have it. Not the business you want. You may have a business, but you may not have the business you want. And he described that as he had 9 businesses, but none of them had an accountant or anybody producing reports or anything like that. This is all in his head. He's doing all this, but he said you need to go see what's coming out at the end of the line. You think you're making something. You think you're creating or producing or selling something, but somebody needs to go down there and look at the end of the line and see what's coming off the rack, because if it's not you, I think I said this when we started this thing, but Dad's recurring theme to me was nobody loves your business like you love your business. And this guy right here has been working with me 42 years. When I had the storage facilities, I would be the only person on the planet that noticed that the grass was growing up between the cracks in the concrete. He would mow the grass, he would edge around and walk right over that, and because it was mine. I saw it. He didn't see it. That's not a downer on him. It's just because it's supposed to be that way.
Yeah.
It's my business, and I see that, and I need to take care of that, and we need to do this different way. It's on me because I'm the one who should love the business more than anybody else.
Yeah.
So Dad said, when you become too sleepy to read your own reports about what's going on, then you're about to go out of business. Because if you leave that to everybody else and you never examine it yourself, you're risking surrender of control, surrender of money, surrender of your business in the end, because you haven't taken, Elvis Presley had the thing on his name, taking care of business. You know? They said he used to come out on the stage right before everything, and he had this gold thing that said, what are the initials? Taking care of business, whatever that TCB. And would wave that at each band member and say, that's what we're doing. This is not a time to be drinking. This is not a time to be smoking. We're doing business here. And then he'd go out and then come out and do his thing.
Yeah.
Well, that's
I got to get one of those chains.
You need to get one for your show.
Wear it around everywhere.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So taking care of business.
Well, I think everybody in our organization is going to have an idea of how things should be done. And we have to, and that's where I see that's what I'm working on now with my, leadership line down the line with my managers is we have to be very clear on our expectations. And it's not, right? And they're going to come up with what they think you expect, and it's usually a completely different thing. And, but yeah, so you have to be there.
Are we still talking in business about having mission statements and this is what we're here for? And do we communicate that with the people who work with us? How's that going today?
But yeah, I mean,
but that's still the plan.
Sure.
Idea.
I mean, I think that if if there's a blaring obvious problem that's in your organization, if you just keep digging, it comes back to the root of not clear on what our mission is.
I don't know why we're here. I don't know what we're doing. I don't know what I'm expected to do by the end of the day, much less the end of the year.
Yeah.
So that's So back to my dad's little principle there. It's somebody's job to see that all that we've just talked about is magnified big enough to really see it. You would say, you got dust in the corner and nobody notices it until it's dust in the middle of the floor because nobody took care of it when it was over there.
Yeah.
And nobody cared. And businesses get that way.
Yeah.
He was really big later on when he recognized other businesses after he had retired and everything had reports and things. He thought that was the neatest thing in the world because you could actually examine on a piece of paper. Well, we were this way at this point a year ago or 6 months ago or last week, and today we're right here. That was just like gold to him. And had he had that back in the day, he would have been an even more successful businessman, I'm sure. But he did it when I first bought the land and put my first buildings on my first storage facility, he came to celebrate it with me. And by the way, I opened on the first day of this century, January the 1st of 2000. And if you can remember back that far, 23 or 24 years ago, that was Y2K day. Remember all the computers in the world were going to stop and you needed to go get money out of the bank and put it in your safety deposit box because you couldn't access it. You need food in the cellar and all. It was a big deal. Well, that was also was my first day to open my business, January 1. I got my first customer on April the 15th of that year. Now, that was an excruciating period of time in my life to think, well, y'all ought to come over here. Don't you see me over here? Come here. And I learned, Dad came to look it over. Before that January the 1st, he actually came in December to see what I had done, what we had done, and had there. And I can still remember him sitting. He could barely get out of the car. He was not healthy at the time, and he said, "Don't forget, this is your business. Nobody's going to love it like you love it, and don't ever stop looking at every detail of it, because if it's that important to you, then every decision you make will be based upon the clarity that you have because you've examined everything routinely, regularly." And so for that particular business, he said, if this were mine, there would not be a single day that I didn't drive here, because it's 7 miles from my house, so it's not this wasn't a big deal. But he said, you need to see what's going on here, and it won't be a lot. A storage facility is not a lot of activity, but he said, a broken light bulb. He listed all these things that could happen, and if nobody's looking, it becomes a detriment to you having a business.
Yeah.
So I've tried to focus in our ministry at the church. I was hard on everybody on this point. You know, I want you to tell me every Friday when we met, I said, you know, I want to know what you've done this week as it related to what you told us you did last week. Not actually every detail of every day, but just you evaluate. It's your business. This part of our work is your business. So now you come and after examining it, you come and tell us what's there. So I forced us to be examiners of what was going on, of looking at our business, our part of it. If you were in preschool ministry, I wanted to know what's going on there. I don't know how many babies are there, but you do, or you should. And if you don't, we got a problem here. So I think that he did say many times, you can get sleepy. You get sleepy because you get successful. You get sleepy because it gets too hard and you want to run away. And all kind of variants of that.
Oh, yeah.
Dad took me, can I tell a story?
Yes, absolutely.
I went, when I was 13 years old, Dad decided to take me, our pastor, and I don't know what the relationship my dad had with this guy, but he was the CEO of Baton Rouge General Hospital, and John Hurt was his name. And he took me, the pastor, Mr. John Hurt himself, and flew us to Merida, Yucatan, a peninsula in Mexico, on the eastern side of Mexico. If you've never been there, it's a beautiful place. To see our pastor's son, who was a missionary there, and his family, and Dad just came up with this one day and said, we're going to Mexico. Okay. So we did. And when we landed in Mexico, Dad, we were still on the tarmac. This is when you just unloaded right off the plane onto the runway, so to speak. And they gave you your luggage and you hauled it off. But while we were doing all of that, he said, I'm going to tell you a story that happened right here. And he told me about this, I need to look up his name. I have it here somewhere. But anyway, this explorer from Spain who came to take over the Aztec Indians. That was his purpose in coming there. And when they landed, I think they had about 7 or 8 ships that came across the Atlantic, landed there, and they departed, or got off the ships. And he had them drag the ships on the shore and set fire to all of them, burn the ships. Y'all have heard this story? Mm-hmm. Burn the ships. And I was amazed listening to him. And we went to the shore where this was supposed to have happened. And the reason, I said, Daddy, what in the world? Dad built boats, so we knew about boats. Back then, he had only built one of his father's. Anyway, there we were, and he said, they burned those ships right here. And that was later that week. And he said, I'll tell you what, you need to learn to burn ships. And I said, what? Mm-hmm. So he told me briefly that day, but when we got back, he decided to expound on it. And he said, there are 3 ships you need to burn. He said, we put names on all the boats. We take great pain to put permanent names. I mean, we weld them to the side of the boat so that it can't be easily taken away. And we give them names. It may be Jolly J, it may be Ruth's, or whatever. We made many tugboats and put name on each one of them. And he said, well, I'm going to tell you 3 boats, 3 ships you need to burn. And the first one is Victory. He said, that's a beautiful boat. People stand along the shore and watch it come by and say, yay, you're a great guy, look what you did. And you get to believe in how good you are. And he said, he was always teaching me a Bible verse. And he said, the Bible says, pride comes before a fall. He said, if you let the Victory ship sail too often in your heart, it will bury whatever it is you're trying to do. And you need to just burn that ship. Because if you get back on it often enough and say, look what we did. He said, that's always in the past tense. You ever notice that? Well, look what we did. He said, there's tomorrow and there's today. and in business, you need to be thinking about that. You need that back there, but you can't live there. And then his second one's a ship named Excuses. He said, that one is filled from the keel to the pilot house with words like this: if, or I didn't have time, or you don't understand. I can't tell you how many times our daughters would say, Daddy, you just don't understand. And I would say, yes, I do. And we would have discussion, but he said, excuses, if you fill your life, he called it a paradox. He said, if you fill your life with excuses, your life will be empty. Because it'll always be what I could have done, what I might have done, what I should have done, what I was capable of doing but didn't choose to do. That'll be your life story. And your life will really be empty. So he said, burn that ship. You don't need the excuse ship. And then the last one he said was, you need to burn the ship called miracle. He said, everybody says it'd take a miracle for me to produce that or get there or accomplish that. He said, it's like we think that God's up in the heavens with this whole handful of passing grades that he's going to fling down into some teacher's grade book and give you a passing grade. You know, if it'd take a miracle for me to make a C on that test. He said, well, people say it all the time. It'd take a miracle for me to be able to accomplish that. And what he said, what we're really saying is, we don't want to have to produce again. So we're not going to put the effort out there. So don't sit around waiting for a miracle. He said, this is another verse, he taught me about that. He said, the scripture says, if a man will not work, he shouldn't eat. I said, what kind of God is that would say that? He said, you're not listening to it. He didn't say he wouldn't eat. He said, he really shouldn't. If you take the balance of things, if you don't work should produce food for you to eat. So without work, then you probably shouldn't eat. You shouldn't have food. He's not telling the world to say, well, if somebody doesn't work, you don't help feed them. That wasn't his feeling that verse meant. But it just takes effort. It takes energy. It takes will to produce something, not just a miracle.
Yeah.
So that was some of his teaching that would lend itself to me believing that there were some things I just need to put aside and not have in my life, in my business life. I just don't need that. I don't need an excuse. I don't need, if I ask somebody that works for, if I ask Steve, why didn't you do that? And he says, well, if you'd have just known, you know, I'm not interested in that. I want that done. And I think that's the way business ought to be run. So
I like that. I think that that'd be a good message to share at our award ceremony that you speak at every year. Good stuff.
I do like that.
So I like it.
And the last one,
number 7.
Number 7. We're going to actually.
But you said you did have a bonus one you had thrown on there. You might have already said that one there.
I may have. The best business partner is God. Dad told me, if you want to make a great enemy, go in business with your best friend. He said it's a great way to become enemies. And it doesn't have to be that way. He said, but wow, it is fertile ground for two guys or ladies or a guy and a lady, whatever, two people who each have an energy, desire, and everything toward a goal. But then somewhere along the way, those get crisscrossed and it can happen. So that was only an illustration of what he said. It doesn't have to happen if your biggest, closest business partner is your Heavenly Father, because He always cares. He's the greatest provider you could ever look toward. His ways are higher than your ways. We think we have high goals, but think about it in business. If you think you can reach the top of that ceiling, God's already said His ways, His ideas are bigger, taller, better than mine. So He's a great partner to have around. And my dad was a great prayer, and he asked God's help on all of his decisions. As I looked, it looked like it was every decision. I'm sure he slid some by that he didn't spend the time doing that with. But if it was any kind of major decision, I can promise you he was asking God about it and getting God to give him the okay, the green light to go or the red light to stop. It was amazing to watch somebody actually live that out. I know I've heard lots of people pray about everything.
Yeah.
That's hard to do. I mean, I know it. I know it's difficult to do. I find it difficult in my own life. Well, I often say, Leighton, I'll say, okay, I've decided I'm going to go into hat business. Oh, by the way, God, would you approve that for me? you know what I'm saying, God? Do you ever feel like you're there? But with my dad, I'm just telling you, I know I'm painting him as some kind of saint, but he would hate me doing that. But I will say, my observation of him was somebody who genuinely thought if he asked God, God would answer him. And so in business, which was 99% of his life, was business. And so in business, that's how he went along. And he would tell me all the time, right? The story I told you a while ago about coming and look at my little business there in Woodward was, have you asked God before you bought this land, didn't you? And you know, before you put this $10,000 fence around here and before you built that building. Yes, sir. I did. I have to tell you that I lied to him, though, because I didn't want him to chastise me, because the fence, I didn't ask God about it. I just couldn't. I still remember it was $10,000. That would never go away.
Last time we were in town, you were talking about how, you know, one of the things you do is share scripture verses to people.
Yeah. That very story about Mr. Ray Keys telling me, you just have to get up and bat. You know, you have to go to the bat, go to the plate. So it was the same time I was building that facility. In late 1999, I asked God to give me one verse of scripture that I could share with one new person every day for the rest of my life. However many years or days that is, which has been thousands and thousands. It's 24 years right now.
Well, this is going to go out to millions of people.
Yeah,
so,
right.
I mean,
so I'll cover a lot of days today.
You're good.
But it came from Ecclesiastes 11, and it just a very simple verse. It says, if you wait for perfect conditions, you will never get anything done. And, you know, I apply that to my diet. When this happens, then I'm going to get on a diet. Or when Christmas is over, when something gets perfect. I often use this when I was talking to couples who were in a relationship crunch. What you're waiting for is the other one to get right on an issue or a thought or a thing. And that's never going to happen. And if it does, wonderful. But you can't live waiting for that to happen. If you do, you're not going forward. Not in this relationship, probably not in your life. You're going to give up a lot of things if you don't get past this right, do it the right way and the best way. And that is to just say, I'm trying to follow God's way. And I'm not going to wait for everybody else to get right. Don't you feel like sometimes you think, if she'll get right, then I'll get right. Or if my business partner, if he'll do this, then I'll be a good business partner. No, you won't. I used to tell people that say, Brother Gene, when I win the lottery, I'm going to start tithing. And I always told every one of them right to their face, no, you won't. The Bible says, if you're not good with little things, you ain't going to be good with big things. Remember that? Yeah. So, you're going to be a better husband when she becomes a better wife? No, you're not. That's not going to happen. You're waiting for something perfect, and you have idealized in your mind that if that were right, then I could change, improve, reach higher, farther. And it's just not true. I just don't believe that.
So how What is the response when you share that? If you're
Listen, I have had so many, that verse.
I'm sure you've had some strikeouts.
Certainly. But no, I always ask people, can I share a verse of scripture with you? And this is, I'm not going to walk up to you right out on the curb right there and do you. We're going to have talk. Now, you may have served me in a restaurant, or you may have rented a storage unit from me, or whatever. Steve's heard me do this hundreds of times, haven't you, Steve?
Yes, I have.
Many, many times. He stood or sat there with me, and I'll just say, hey, before I take your check, I want to ask you, can I tell you a verse of scripture that I think might help you? And I'll share it with them. I've never had anybody say no. Mm-hmm. And I've missed very few days finding somebody. You think, well, you'd run out of people. That's not true. I can tell you that is not true. And
some people are touched by it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're asking responses,
Yeah.
Steve, and I can remember people who just started crying. Mm-hmm. I had one, more than that, but I can remember one over there in Pineville, and he was a rough, everything about him was rough, tough, he was just a rough, tough guy. And somebody that I probably didn't want to go have lunch with, but I asked him, I said, can I share a verse from the Bible with you? I always had a Bible sitting there, and I put my hand on it and said, can I share a verse from the Bible with you? And he said, I guess so. So I shared that verse. That man cried his eyes out. He said, nobody has ever read anything from the Bible to me, and I've never read it, never opened one up in my life. It's that in the Bible, and I've opened it and showed it to him. And he said, wow, you mean God? There is a God? And we had this long discussion about God and his life, and it just opens doors. It has opened many, many doors. Something was jumping in my mind just then about another time that I did that. And it was a lady and her daughter. Yeah, it wasn't her granddaughter. I think it was her daughter. Anyway, she said, would you write that down for me? So I took a little note card and wrote it down word for word and gave it to her. It was about 3 weeks later, one night, not real late, but just say 7:30 or 8, something like the phone rings, and it's her. She's crying. And she says, I have been waiting and waiting and waiting for everybody else in my life to get right so that I could get right. And I finally discovered from that verse you gave me, she read it from the card to me, that no, I really need to get right, and everybody else, that's on them. And she said, I just wanted to tell you what it meant to me that you gave that to me. So I've never had anybody just walk away and say, most everybody says, whoo, I can apply that. Oh, I know what I was going to tell you. About 4 months ago, we were redoing a lady's house, Miss Cheryl, and she had an infestation of bees in her bedroom, and so she had had called the extermination company, and the guy came while we were there actually planning out what the remodeling was going to be. So she opens the door, and he walks in, and they walk back to the bedroom, and we're just sitting there waiting. And they come back in, and I introduce myself, and we talk a little bit I ask him if he goes to church, just conversation. And he's very polite, very nice man. I said, can I share a verse of scripture with you that just means a lot to me, and made anything something to you? So I quoted that verse. He fell on his knees, Steve was there, fell on his knees and said, you don't know this, but my wife and I have been struggling with a decision for months, not knowing which way to turn, and now in a moment I know exactly what I need to do, because I've been waiting for perfect conditions to do it, and I'm not going to wait anymore. And walked out of there. I invited him to my Bible class. He's come a number of times, and so it just opens doors.
Yeah.
It really does.
Wow.
My bonus one.
Yeah.
Do we have enough time? Or we out?
Yeah. We have about 5 more minutes. Yep.
Oh, okay. Is Dad used to say, a good beginning does not guarantee a great ending. And his verse of scripture was also from Ecclesiastes 7:8. It says, finishing is better than starting. Patience is better than pride. He said, anybody can start anything, but it's finishers that make the difference in the world. He said, I want you, boy, he always called me boy, I want you, boy, to be an extraordinary man among ordinary people. You be extraordinary. And you can do that, he said, by finishing what you start. If you're not going to finish it, don't start it. And I've always respected that in him. I respected it as a principle I needed in my life. And when I observe it in somebody, I applaud it immediately. It can be a little kid finishing his year when Zeke got his trophy and was able to just shout with him. You know, he finished.
Yeah.
I'm sure somewhere along the way during the season he wanted to quit.
Yeah.
We all do.
Yeah.
But he didn't. And to somebody who's finishing their race, I've held the hands of many people who were dying and would pray with them and thank them that they had made a pathway that I could observe in my life that uplifted my life, that they were showing. You know, the man who started the Methodist Church was John Wesley. And John Wesley interviewed one time because he had grown such a massive group of followers. And so he was interviewed for a newspaper article, and he said, what distinguishes Methodists from other people? And his single response to him was, our people die well. Of course, they wanted to know, what in the world do you mean? He said, you know, some people leave this planet screaming, hollering, and scared. He said, our people, because they have confidence in their relationship with God, go out with a sweet, sweet feeling that I'm going home. I'm going home. Dad used to tell me all the time as he was dying with congestive heart failure, he'd say, don't worry about me. I'd be worried. You know how you do. You're somebody you love, you want to pet on them and kind of encourage them, whatever I could do. And he'd say, you're just worrying about me too much. I'm going home. I'm going home. And that's good. So I was able to let him go easier than I thought I would. I actually spoke at his funeral, so that was. Were you there for that?
I was not there for that.
Okay. It was over in Baton Rouge.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I've lingered too long, but I'm through.
Yeah.
No, I think that is a beautiful way to wrap up the 3 sessions, because we started the very first one. It was really focused on your father, and this whole series has really been dedicated to his influence on your life. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a beautiful way to just wrap up in talking about dying well. Mm-hmm. And it's been amazing. I've loved this story
for sure.
I've taken a lot out of it.
Oh yeah.
I'm glad that Steve has joined us.
Yeah.
Steve's joined us. That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So if you ever have Gene, if you contact him to build something for you or do anything for you, you're probably going to see Steve there with you. He's going to be there.
Yeah.
So
I'm showing some pictures Sunday of. I'm going to talk about the difference between restoration and conversion. We're talking about Paul's conversion on the Damascus Road. And so I'm showing some pictures of restorations that he and I've done, and he's in every picture. I'm the one taking the picture,
well,
but
it's
he's
funny,
the one doing the work.
This morning at breakfast, the grandkids were there. We all met at a restaurant, and Gene pulled out. He had built a tree house for Carter, but then I'm just thinking Steve was part of that.
Oh,
he was there helping
every single day.
And then the house that we remodeled, and it was funny because you flipped through a picture that had Steve laying on our finished wood floors at the house that they had remodeled, and because it was like a 3-day process. Remember, we kept coming in, putting a coat, it wasn't ready, coat, and so there was a picture of Steve just laying on the floors because it's finally ready.
On the way to this room today in the truck, I told him I was going to use that picture. That's one of the pictures I'm going to use Sunday in my lesson. He said, I said it's about restoration. We were restoring the house and everything. He said, well, that's what I was doing Tell them what you said.
Throwing my energy. I was tired.
Yeah, yeah.
tired.
I think you were wearing the same thing in that picture. You had a gray shirt and jeans on. Was that your?
He loves gray. That's his favorite.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I was like, Steve hadn't aged a bit since I met him.
Not the shirt. I hope it probably got a stain on that one.
All right. Well, hey, I appreciate it. I know it's a lot of trouble to come up here, and y'all have left early, and this is going to be we're going to do a recap episode of our whole first season, and but yeah, finishing it off with the 3 episodes with you, and it's been great. So
It's been great.
Exciting stuff.
All right.
Next year you come back.